In this last video, we're going to look at cellular respiration. So remember, we had glycolysis happening first, and that happens always first. And then we had the without oxygen side, and that was fermentation would happen second. But if we have oxygen, if we have enough oxygen present, then the with oxygen side is going to be cellular, goodness gracious, it's going to be the cellular respiration. So the cellular respiration process is where we're going to be breaking down glucose when oxygen is present, and that will be producing large amounts of energy for us, much larger than we could get in fermentation. Our equation is going to look like this. We're going to need oxygen, we're going to need food. It is important that you eat. We make carbon dioxide, we make water, and we make energy. So this equation should look familiar to us. We've seen many of these components in photosynthesis, only it was reversed. We needed light, we needed water, we needed carbon dioxide, and we made sugar and we made oxygen. Cellular respiration is the opposite. And so if you know one, you can easily know the other. Now you're also going to have the word equation, so you know what all of these represent. The O2 is oxygen, glucose, sugar, carbohydrates for the C6H12O6. We have carbon dioxide, CO2, H2O is water, and then energy is referring to the ATP molecule. So that's our energy. Now, when we go through the cellular respiration side, instead of doing fermentation, the next step would be the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle is taking that pyruvic acid, so again, glycolysis had to happen because glycolysis makes the pyruvic acid. That pyruvic acid is going to get broken down into carbon dioxide. And it goes through the process. It has several steps to it. We're not going to learn all the individual steps, but just kind of the overview. So if oxygen is present, that's the key here for this side of our flow chart. This is called aerobic activities. These are activities that require oxygen. This takes place in the mitochondria. So here's our powerhouse. We should be expecting to see much larger ATP numbers. It's also known as the citric acid cycle. I usually stick with calling it the Krebs cycle, but just in case you see it somewhere else called the citric acid cycle, yes, it does have an alternate name. Now, after the Krebs cycle is over, the next step, step 3, is for it to go through this electron transport. And this is just a series of these high energy electrons being moved from one high energy carrier to the next, and at the end of that, the end of the whole, it's kind of a chain reaction. One carrier passes the electrons to the next, which passes it to the next, and so on. At the end of the process, the whole point here is to take an ADP molecule, which is kind of a half-charged battery, add a phosphate, and we get ATP. So that's what's happening in the electron transport. There's hydrogen atoms that are building up in this inner membrane space, and those hydrogen molecules are important because those hydrogen molecules, along with this enzyme, will help to combine the ADP with the phosphate and make the ATP molecule. So this enzyme ATP synthase, notice it has the ASE ending for an enzyme, and it's called ATP synthase because it's making ATP. Now if we look at the totals and we compare them, I mentioned that glycolysis produces 2, not an incredibly overwhelming number of ATP molecules by any means, but it does produce some energy for us. Now in the Krebs cycle and electron transport, if we can have enough oxygen to support our cellular needs and we can go through the Krebs cycle and electron transport, we produce 34 more. So that means a total of 36 ATP have been produced through glycolysis and cellular respiration. Now, we do not personally get to use all of the energy from glucose. When you break the food down in your stomach, some of the energy gets lost as heat, which helps to give us our body temperature. And so we don't we could get even more ATP, but because some of the glucose energy has already been lost, we don't fully get 100% of that. Now, we mentioned that the equation for photosynthesis and cellular respiration were opposites, so I want to do a quick comparison. And for photosynthesis, we need to know that it captures energy. It captures the energy of the sun. You should know that it takes place in the chloroplast organelle. So again, not all living things have a chloroplast, so photosynthesis is not something that all living things do. And it needs carbon dioxide to make oxygen. So those are kind of three, and we'll look at the cellular respiration and kind of piggyback off of those. So if we look at cellular respiration and compare it to photosynthesis, we said photosynthesis captures energy. Well, cellular respiration releases it. This is a way for us to release ATP molecules so that we can use them. So we're not capturing ATP, we're actually making it and releasing it for our cells to use. It takes place in a completely different organelle. So now we're looking at the mitochondria, and the mitochondria is found in all living things, because all living things are going to need to be able to break down food, whether they had to make the food themselves or they had to eat it. The mitochondria is still needed to take those food molecules and create the energy. And then lastly, we need oxygen. We breathe in oxygen, and in the process we produce carbon dioxide as a waste product. We exhale that every time we breathe. Plants then take in that carbon dioxide and give us back oxygen, which we then take in and give back carbon dioxide. So plants and you and I have a much needed relationship. They give us the oxygen we need, in return we give them the carbon dioxide they need. So it's a really healthy relationship.